So Thesis is a Bitcoin venture studio. We were originally founded in 2014. And usually what we do, it's not what we mean by venture studio, it's not an incubator. So we're not, doing kind of this like spray and pray shipping and bringing out, as many projects as possible. It's more deep conviction bets, usually kind of 1 to 2 projects a cycle. We've launched about 10 companies or projects over that time period. Some have been more kind of like fintech oriented, like one of our projects, Fold, which was one of the first projects we started with. They just went public on NASDAQ actually earlier this year. It's a Bitcoin rewards platform available in the US. So you can spend Bitcoin, spend dollars, earn Bitcoin cash back. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we've done varying degrees of like token-based projects, mostly on chain, some decentralized exchanges, some wrapped asset products, some Bitcoin rewards projects. And then our latest and kind of biggest push most recently is Mezo, which is a Bitcoin sidechain effort that is focused on Bitcoin financing. So unlocking, in essence, kind of vision is Bitcoin mortgages. So everything we do, kind of the whole spectrum of different projects is all about unlocking real time and real use cases for Bitcoin beyond just the hodl use case, and aligning ourselves as closely as possible to the ethos of Bitcoin, which is, open source, community first, everything as transparent as possible, all on chain, that kind of thing.
And can you talk a little bit about, with Mezo in particular,
Sure.
were there sort of pain points or like just sort of pockets of opportunity that led you all to founding Mezo?
Yes.
And if so, what were those things?
Yeah, of course. So for us, it's been, Mezo was kind of the way to bring the last 10 years together and put a bow on it, because it's a chain and underpins, most of our projects prior to Mezo have been more kind of app focused, whether it was off chain or on chain. And for us, it just made sense to kind of tie it all together with an underpinning of, which is Mezo, this chain ecosystem that it's kind of the connective tissue for everything we've been doing. So organically, it just made a lot of sense. And, the timing was great as well, because especially in this space, timing is everything when you're launching, especially trying to find that ever elusive product market fit or protocol market fit, as we refer to it. And so for us, there was a pretty unique window in the market. We launched Mezo officially, announced last year in 2024, and been kind of working on it now for close to 2 years. And really, there was a kind of a tremendous opportunity off the back of like the Bitcoin ETF being approved, ordinals, and sort of this boomerang effect that, Bitcoin NFTs or ordinals had unlocked, which is bringing developers and builders back to the Bitcoin space. And so, launching a chain and kind of connecting all of our apps and ecosystem partners together just made, so the most logical step for us from a product standpoint.
And this is, probably a good place to talk about Bitcoin's evolution, as you would describe it, right? I think that there's a variety of different, viewpoints out there, and depending on what, set of discourse you're in, it's digital scarcity, store of value, digital gold,
payments.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe describe for the audience how you've seen Bitcoin's evolution and how it's sort of evolved over time in sort of the crypto context. And then you can also tie that in maybe with how does Mezo fit into that evolutionary journey?
So really the primary use case for Bitcoin, since it was kind of came to the world in 2008 over the last 15 years has been what we kind of call the hodl use case, or the speculative use case, just, buy it, hold, hope the price goes up kind of thing. There's then various attempts at adding a different utility around it. For example, like lending in the days of, 2020 to 2022, there was a big push for that. Now, a lot of these companies that were doing it are no longer around, and they kind of had more of like your traditional banking model, incorporating credit and rehypothecation into it. Market appetite was strong for that, but in terms of the infrastructure and kind of risk management side, I think there was some, opportunities for improvement. And now you're sort of seeing, these two worlds come together with those product use cases of unlocking, additional utility beyond the speculative use case, but, doing it in a way that's much more aligned with Bitcoin kind of fundamental values, which is open source, democratizing access for wealth generation and real kind of utility for your money around the world, and not being subject to maybe, governments or third parties manipulating that. So for us, bringing kind of Mezo into the fold made a lot of sense, because there was sort of this window of like in the past cycles, the use cases beyond, the speculative use cases like Bitcoin utility, yield, et cetera, had been proven, but the models themselves were not sustainable long term. And we recognize that there's a pretty tremendous opportunity right now, especially with regulatory clarity happening in the US, with a pro-crypto administration now in office. there was some opportunity to kind of lean in, really create a full stack on-chain experience that encompasses the best of both worlds, caters to kind of that maxi mentality, or we like to call it the Bitcoin Stoic internally, but just, the people who are in on Bitcoin and call everything else a shitcoin. That's sort of like one side of the spectrum. And then on the other side, you have, people just looking to grow their wealth and maybe not as deeply invested in like some of the principles behind Bitcoin and decentralization. We found kind of that, threading the needle on both sides, where we can have a product that caters to the stoics or the maxi type user, people who are pro freedom and decentralization, but also catering to their needs as a user, wanting to grow that wealth. And on the same side, on the other side, people who maybe don't have as much of a focus on decentralization or open source, but still want to grow their wealth and use digital assets as a vehicle to do that. And so that's kind of the core North Star of Mezo and all the rest of the Thesis projects as well. And then, kind of taking that one step further, building in, kind of core apps and user interface ways for folks to engage with these products and doing it in a way that's much more simplified and kind of, aligned with that like Web 2 user experience or what you would find in like the Google Play or Apple App Store.
The vision as I've sort of like digested it is really around this circular economy construct at Mezo, and really having that circular economy powered by BTC, right? By Bitcoin. I'm just curious, as you think about why building that circular economy is important for Bitcoin's future, how would you describe that specifically on that vector?
The Bitcoin circular economy is a sort of a high level view, but certainly aligns well with how we're thinking about, the next decade of what Bitcoin looks like and digital assets more generally. We believe the world is increasingly moving on chain, just as if you look at all these other sectors around the world, beyond just finance, right? There's been the digitization of everything, right? From our media to our even our healthcare with telemedicine, right? And finance is kind of undergoing that right now. So if you believe in kind of the, digitization of everything, including assets and financial products, if you take that one step further, most of these sort of tailwinds are, and the unlock for this is happening on chain, because that's, blockchains in my view are kind of an upgrade from the Swift network or the way the current financial Wall Street system works to date. And the banks themselves, the Swift network was created pre-internet, right? And there's been sort of this, fintech interim step where like the Stripes of the world, Plaids of the world are using kind of these analog rails, creating kind of a 1.5 improvement. Obviously, they've done very well. These companies have done very well. But if you continue to accelerate that forward, what does that world look like, in this generation that's coming up, the Gen Z and even earlier than that, people born in this century are used to a world that's entirely natively and mobile and digital, right? So if you kind of accelerate these tailwinds and think about, what does the future look like 5, 10, 20 years from now? It's going to be a world that is happening 24/7, 365, all online, is openly accessible, just like the internet is to anyone in the world. And blockchains are a key unlock for that, because at the end of the day, they're just sort of a giant coordination mechanism and a ledger that allows for, much more flexibility and use cases to be built by anyone around the world who has an internet connection. So it's an extremely powerful force that, I definitely liken akin to the internet in terms of that unlock. And, the world runs on money at the end of the day, right? We're all sort of living in these capitalist societies. And so if you think about, how do you tap into that and really kind of, skate? I'm a hockey guy, skate to where the puck is going. Right. I think the future looks like something that's a product fully on chain, has that sort of transparency embedded within, that trust, incorporated, uses an experience where folks, sometimes they wouldn't even know that they're interacting with the blockchain. Right. And that's, I think, where we're sort of at the next leg right now is, how do you, create this great user experience for folks, but do it in a way that still sort of aligns with their value set and the way the tailwinds of the world are going from a macro and microeconomic standpoint. And so for Mezo itself, Bitcoin is the biggest asset class in terms of digital assets, right? And it's continuing to grow. Bitcoin dominance is at all-time highs in the market. And you have this boomerang effect that happened last year, especially in 2024, right around the halving. And before that with this, renewed excitement for developers coming in with ordinals, for example, right? As was sort of a one inflection point that brought folks back into the space. You had the happening, folks looking for and mining companies looking for new revenue streams. Then you have the regulatory sort of tailwind stack on top of that. Clarity is finally coming to the space. And so, I think we're at sort of a new age for on-chain products, a way that, will kind of weave and bring together the Web 2 and Web 3 experiences. And so for us, we think what that looks like is a Bitcoin financing platform, or a place where that is a Bitcoin bank, and kind of actually allude back to like Hal Finney's original post. And I think there was something on a forum in 2010 about a Bitcoin bank, right? So for us, kind of seeing that vision through, really creating a place that's a full loop, ecosystem economy experience, all processed in Bitcoin. And then you can use it actually in the real world and, beyond just sort of that speculative use case.